mission for our business is to change the way the world works out. So that's really our big, hairy, audacious goal. And our vision for our business is to empower 1 million people to change their lives through the Studio Pilates workout, over a weekly basis. So in order to do that, we're looking for a lot of franchise partners to be able to be able to fulfill that vision.
Hello, everyone, and thanks again for tuning in to the latest edition of FranCoach's Franchising 101 podcast. I am Tim Parmeter, founder and CEO of FranCoach and your podcast host. Today, we are bringing in to us one of our franchise partners, but we are going big time international with this. They are literally coming from halfway around the world, have brands all over the country, and really the premier provider of this modality out there. So very excited to get to know these people and this brand a little bit more and share that with you. That's next. A quick reminder of who we are at FranCoach before we get to them. FranCoach is the premier franchise consulting firm. Our number one goal is to properly educate you on franchise ownership to determine if you should own one. And if so, we're going to help you find your absolute best fit. Our educational approach ensures we focus on the client's best interest. We are not here to sell you a franchise. In fact, we don't sell anything. Finding the best franchise owned is an incredibly personalized and individualized process that can only work with a team of experts focused on what is truly most important. That's you. FranCoach, our services are always 100% free to use, so reach out to our team. Click the QR code or find us at francoach.net. Now, let's get back to the show. All right, folks, we are back on the Franchising 101 podcast, and we are officially going international today. We have joining us from really like halfway around the world in lovely Australia. We have the founder and CEO of the premier international Pilates franchise called Studio Pilates International, Mr. Jade Winter. Jade, thanks for joining us.
G'day, Tim. Thanks for having me.
We are excited to talk to you, and mostly before the accent. I'm not going to lie. That's going to, as you know, that's going to get everybody's attention. But looking forward to talking all about this great franchise you have. And I hope you're ready, brother. I got lots of questions for you for this, but I always like hearing people's stories, and you've got a fantastic background. So talk just a little bit about Jade and kind of like before we founded a Pilates studio. Give us a little background.
Yeah, thanks for asking, Tim. Look, let's wind right back. I was a swimmer once upon a time. I did a lot of that, made the Australian Olympic team for swimming. And, I just loved health, fitness, wellness. That was just what I did, as part of everything that was just in my DNA, and so from there, I, after the swimming side of things, still had a passion. I wanted to help others with their health, fitness, wellness. And I did a little bit of personal training for a little bit, but then, was really looking for something that could really help people with and make a huge impact. And Pilates came on. I was exposed to Pilates as a cross training tool for elite sport, and it all fell into place. I founded the company with my wife, Jade Winter. She was a physiotherapist. You call them physical therapists, and it just all came together, and we just. The rest is history. We just focused on, creating a unique experience, something that was great. We had no money when we started, Tim. Here's a fun fact. Started the business, we were just 22, 23 and had no money. And so I started the business up on my credit card. So I went to the bank. I said, can I have a $10,000 loan? And they laughed me out of the bank. They said, have you got any assets? I said, what's an asset? No clue, so I remember that I had a credit card. I'd never used it, $10,000 limit, did a cash advance, bought a couple of reformers, Pilates reformers. And we opened a tiny little studio, tiny little shop. And we just delivered the best possible workout that we had. And we were busy within a couple of weeks. We were walking the streets of our local neighborhood, sticking flyers into, like brochures into people's letterboxes and their mailbox. And we just had an absolute passion for getting people fitter, more well, moving through Pilates. And, and that passion is still with me today. I love doing it, and I love to see, people change their lives through what we do. And it's a beautiful thing, Tim. You know what I mean? Like, our franchisees and instructors are just blessed every day. They get, we have customers that come up to us every single day and say, thank you for bringing this to the neighborhood. This has changed my life, and it's so incredibly fulfilling.
No, I absolutely, I love that. And you and I talked a little before we came on, as I am a huge fan as a user of Pilates as well. But we got to go back for a second. You just, in the most casual way possible, talked about being an Olympic athlete. Like, you just telling me what you had for lunch. Oh yeah, I had a ham sandwich for lunch. So okay. So you're not getting off that easy. Yeah, like I'll spend 10 minutes talking about my lame ass career as a Division II college basketball player if you want, but you being an Olympic swimmer, like what year and what was your, like, I'm not super smart on swimming, so help me out with what exactly you did.
Yeah, so that was 1996 Atlanta Olympics in Georgia. And I was only very young, 18 at the time. And look, it was an incredible experience, Tim, to see all of these different athletes from all across the world coming together and, competing, for the glory. And the unique thing is that, with any sport, usually there's a multiple competitions every year. You'll have the World Championships, and that'll be sort of yearly. But the Olympics, it's once every 4 years, Tim. Do you know what I mean? It's insane that it only comes around once every 4 years. And that's what makes it so unique and special, and it's, look, I've got goosebumps just thinking about it. It is so incredibly special. And to see athletes from, all walks of life. I remember going into the dining hall, and there was tiny Romanian gymnasts, female gymnasts, tiny. And they're lining up against these giant powerlifters, from the Eastern Bloc countries. And there were 50 kilogram people and 150 kilogram athletes. Do you know what I mean? Just like massive difference. And, everyone was there for the experience. Everyone was there to compete and try their very best. And that's it was an incredible experience. Things like the opening ceremony, closing ceremony. These are just once in a lifetime opportunities for most people. And, for some athletes, they train their whole lives and most never even get to compete there, that is, it's a real incredible experience, and something that has stuck with me, I think, in business, just that, that the level of intensity of the training, of the consistency of the, needing a coach, staying focused, not getting distracted by other things, the day in, day out, the daily disciplines that you have to do, and just giving it your all each and every day. These are the things, you do that for over a decade to even have an opportunity to compete on that world stage. And, I think that all of those lessons, I brought to business, that tenacity, that consistency, like I said, that dogged determination that you have to have in any business, and you can be successful. All of that stuck with me, and I'd learned that at a very young age, and I think that was a positive thing. That never give up attitude.
Yeah, and it's almost like, I think of all the, you get the whatever you're doing, it's like, okay, here's whether it's the Olympics or whatever, where it's time to compete. It's the hours and hours and hours of the practice and the training where nobody's around. There's no glory to it. That in some ways, I think as athletes, we're maybe not all that smart. You're like, why are you doing all of this work, right? That nobody's around to then maybe still, I don't know how to say this better. Sometimes still get your ass kicked, right? But so many, I'm sure you have the same thing of so many lessons that I can draw back from with that to then into entrepreneurship of just like, it doesn't dawn on me that I'm going to fail. It's just
I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to work hard and have that discipline and determination to be able to do that. And so, I'm quite sure that is carried over with you as well as you got to start. And again, you weren't even smart enough to realize I'm using all of my $10,000 to start a business from scratch that maybe is going to work, maybe's not. And and here we are all these years later.
Absolutely. And hey, look, that's the thing, swimming, any sport, you can put in the work and you may not be successful,
Yeah.
However, the character building that you experience along the way, that's the lessons that can never be taken away, win or fail. That can never be taken away. And that's the thing that sticks with you. That's the thing that can never be lost, is that confidence that you put in the result, you put in the work, and whether the result is there or not, you now know how to do it. You know how to do it.
Yep. And again, I think the failure is also a positive learning experience of okay, well, I failed. Okay, well, let's fix it. Let's keep moving on. Right.
Let's analyze. And I think that cycle was instilled into me as a young athlete. You would win, lose or draw, you go to your coach and you go, okay, well, what can we do better next time? What do we learn from that race? What do we learn from that preparation block? That 6 months that we trained, that 1 year that we trained, that 4 years that we trained for this particular moment in time.
Yeah.
What can we draw from that? What can we learn? And it's the same thing for for business. It's no different. It's no different.
Yeah. So you start this on the shoestring of all-time shoestring budgets to get this going. You got a couple of reformers, you get started. At what point did you start thinking, hey, we may have something here that we can not just take around the country, we can take around the globe?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tim. After about 7 years of really just we started out very radically different to what we offer now as our franchise. We started with what I see now as a really sort of broken, inefficient business model. It was me. You might come in with your wife, and I would take you for a class. It's really sort of personal training, one-on-one, small groups, that sort of thing. It was really inefficient. It's a fantastic, it's a great modality, but it's not efficient from a business perspective. Right. And so after several years, I knew that we did something. The way that we delivered our workouts was unique. And I realized that because I traveled to a bunch of different places, traveled to America, traveled to the United Kingdom, all these different places all around the world, and experienced classes there. You know what? I believe that I'm doing it better. I believe that I'm, doing it in a way that is unique, and I think that it is scalable. But the way that we did it was so we moved into a bigger location. We added on the group reformer workouts. These group reformer workouts then really took off. It was so much more simple, so much more easy to execute, and more people could come to the workout and pay a little less money, because you could charge less because you had more scale. And so from that, I was, just hyper focused then on scaling the business. But we didn't do it straight away. This is very organic, Tim, our beginnings. When we moved into that new location, I knew that there was fundamental flaws in a Pilates studio business model. And one of those flaws was instructor inconsistencies. You'd get some really great instructors and you get some that were pretty average and then some that were terrible. Right. And so then the customers would suffer because of that, and the business would suffer, and you train them, and it wouldn't work. So what I had to do was systemize and make it simple for the customer to understand what the class, how to do every exercise, because that's another thing, it's quite complicated. Yeah. Some of the moves, the machinery is quite complicated. So what I did, I created videos and popped those onto televisions that were on the walls of the studio, and that videos that showed exactly what to do, every angle of the move, so that it was really simple for the customer to understand exactly how, exactly what to do. And the instructors didn't have to explain how to do everything. And it's that explanation that the instructor gives that can sometimes be inconsistent, and that the customer is then like, oh, what do I do? I'm confused. They're looking around, looking at other people in the class, and then it's just like, it's chaos. So I put the televisions up there, all of the content, and also added an audio guide as well. So there's a virtual, instructor, so that then what that did, Tim, as an instructor, it liberated me, right? I could actually then get hands-on with the clients. I could make sure that every customer was having an amazing experience. I could change the resistance for every customer. We've got 10, 15 customers now in a group performer class.
Right.
I can get there as an instructor. I can change the springs and make sure that Tim has the right springs on. He has an amazing workout. So these things, when I discovered that, when I created this, no one in the fitness industry was doing television screens, in a boutique fitness gym. And now a lot of them are. But we were the first to market on that. That was back in 2009. And, I knew that I'd created something special, Tim, and I wanted to see that scale, not only internally through Australia, but I knew that this is something that could be leveraged globally because of the consistency that we could bring to the table in that studio experience.
I love it. And so really, you almost like have dual instructors now, right?
Correct.
And one on the video screen is textbook with this. I'm guessing that also for the instructors does keep them from deviating too much if somebody's going, hey, the dude up on the screen is showing me this way and you're telling me that way. So again, the whole point of the franchise should be, that there's the consistency no matter where you go, when you go there. I walk into McDonald's, I know a Big Mac is, this, and this. Now they know they can walk in whatever class, whatever location, and there's really, truly that consistency. That's got to be a great experience for everybody with that. So that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit just about maybe for somebody that doesn't fully know, we get Pilates is boutique fitness. There's the group, there's instructor led, and now kind of like dual instructor led classes. But there's this, and for if people are of a certain age and remember the movie Princess Bride, I always think of the reformer as like the torture machine from the Princess Bride. And so I know it's really not, and so you may be going, "What the hell are you talking about?" But you can Google that as well as our younger listeners out there for this. But there's a machine called the reformer. Talk a little bit of just kind of what Pilates is, and kind of some of the things it's really trying to achieve.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the Pilates reformer, if you're more familiar with maybe the gym environment, it's kind of like one of those multi-stations. You can do, like in the gym, there's a thing that'll do 10 different exercises or 20 different exercises. The reformer is a machine you can do 700 different exercises, and that's one of the amazing things about it. And the resistance, instead of weights, it is springs, really heavy duty, big springs, and that's where you get the resistance from. And so it's an extremely versatile, non-impact on the joints workout, that is resistance based. And what we do, Tim, is we actually focus on really, every exercise is around 90 seconds. In some Pilates studios, you only do a really short exercise. We've actually increased the length of that. So it's around 90 seconds for each exercise. And so then you really get in your groove. You really feel that with that strong resistance, you feel the muscles burning. You feel that resistance. You feel like you're strengthening, which you are. And you're also laying down, lean muscle mass as well. So, clients get incredible results, incredibly toned, stronger, fitter, leaner, all those things because of some of the strategies that we've deployed. And we focus on, the scientific element of muscle, endurance training and hypertrophy training. So, big words that basically just mean that you're strengthening the muscles, you're increasing the size of them, and you're getting that more toned and athletic appearance. And so that's one of those unique things that really sets us apart from others. It's not only that consistency that you talked about before, and for instructors, it's that fulfillment that you can get hands-on, change the resistance, but also, Tim, one of the great things about what we do is, let's say if a customer has a sore shoulder and can't do it with that particular arm exercise, the beauty of this is the whole class doesn't grind to a halt, because the instructor then has to help that one individual person. Or worse, that customer is then sat on the sidelines, and they can't do that exercise they know. So they're just sitting there, feeling silly, and feeling left out of the group. Now the class just rolls on, and the instructor can actually help that person, give them an alternative exercise, and that's a game changer, Tim. That's, from a confidence perspective from the participant. It's like, oh yeah, now I don't feel left out. I don't feel silly. I don't feel uncoordinated because I can see exactly what I'm doing. These are things that we really focus on as brand, is to build the confidence of an individual, and that's, that's, I think, forgotten in the Pilates industry and very much in the fitness industry. It's about the confidence of the individual and building strength in their confidence as much as their body.
What if your 9-to-5 job didn't last forever? What if there was a better way to create professional success your way without fear of layoffs or downsizing? What if I told you that it's all possible through franchise ownership? Franchise ownership gives you a proven playbook to execute, so you can be in business for yourself, but not by yourself. But with thousands of franchises out there, how do you know which is the best one for you? That's where FranCoach comes in. FranCoach will help build out your ideal business model based on your talents, skills, and core values. Then use our proprietary knowledge of the franchises to bring curated options based on what you want, and then guide you through the vetting process until we find your best match. Individualized, personalized, and 100% free to you. Ready to control your future? Scan the QR code or visit francoach.net and let FranCoach help create your better tomorrow.
And that's a part of I'm sure you get this in your classes, where there's a great community that is built in boutique fitness, and even just with the other members of, being there to encourage one another. And again, or even like, hey, where were you? Jade, I didn't see you on Tuesday. We're always there on Tuesday, to kind of have those accountability partners with this. And so the Pilates was, I always think this is interesting because Pilates was founded by, oh my gosh, Joseph Pilates, right? A dude. But everybody gets the perception of, and maybe reality, that the demographic of people that are going to come do Pilates is all female and tend skews to be younger females. Is that actually true? What are you seeing in the demographics for your studios?
Yeah, I think for us, it's around about 80-20, so 80% female, 20% male, but that varies depending on how many male instructors you've got on the floor. Right, if you've got more male instructors, look, I think women are just more in tune with different exercise modalities, if I'm honest, and I think they're just a bit smarter in their approach to it, to be honest, and they're more, willing to try different things, and I think but we're seeing a huge shift, Tim. We're seeing a huge shift, like so many wives bringing their husbands in, and they're fall in love with the workouts and they come more than their wives do, and so that's a great thing. And look, that's as an instructor, that's super rewarding to see, to get a guy to fall in love with it. And it's, and I think what we found globally is the American market. I think the American males are more savvy when it comes to Pilates and the benefits of it. So that's a really great thing. And look, so many pro athletes use Pilates as a cross-training tool. You've got NFL football players that are using it. You've got pro basketballers, baseballers. These guys are looking for any possible edge that they can, to play in that, that division or, in those pro leagues. So they're throwing everything at that, including Pilates, and it's a game changer for them.
Yeah. That was the first time I had ever heard of Pilates, was a little 10, 12 years ago. And I played basketball, but the team I follow from a sports standpoint is the Chicago Cubs. And they had a pitcher that won the Cy Young that he talked about, like he did Pilates so much they built like a Pilates studio in their clubhouse for him, right? Had he sucked, they probably weren't going to do that. But, if you're the best pitcher in baseball at any point. They're going to do whatever you want. But and talked about like just his core and the balance of the movements and that overall strength. And I think that because most of the time from a guy standpoint, you're like, oh, I'm just going to go run or I'm going to lift weights and like you're going to do those things. And I have said over the last couple of years since I first really got introduced to doing this, I'm like, oh, you think running or lifting is better? Just go try it and see how it kicks your ass and how you feel a couple of days later, right? So I'm sure for you guys, like you could tell anybody, come on, no, we'll give you, and I don't know if you guys do this, no, we'll give you the first class free because it's gonna kick your ass and you're going to feel it in places. I don't care how good a shape you're going to feel it in places you didn't realize were places, right?
100%.
So, right. And so I'm guessing for your owners, there's certainly more and more awareness to this now, but still that educational piece of it's not all young females. It can really be all ages. And I think maybe even more, I don't know what you guys are seeing, but that older all demographic, grasping to it from a, can I tie my shoes, right? Can I do all of those things that now all of a sudden it's kind of gradual and then all of a sudden it's gone. You're like, wait, I used to be able to touch my toes. I can't do that anymore. Or I can't do these certain things. And you're getting that, right? So again, kind of seeing a pretty broad range of who, I'm sure there's the core, but then the range is pretty wide, correct?
Absolutely. Well, I think, this is one of the unique things about Studio Pilates is because the way that we've created it, it makes it accessible. Right? It makes it accessible for everyone. We have what we call universally accessible class format. So the universally accessible class, literally in the same class, we have got D1 level athletes or pro athletes right next to someone who is, 70 years of age and has never exercised a day in their life in the same class, right beside each other, because the workout, the way that I've structured it, it meets the client where they're at in their fitness journey so they can change the resistance and get what they need. We have eliminated dangerous exercises that, only pro athletes can do. We've kept it simple so that the exercises, you feel them working and they're safe. These are all things that we've been built. And what that's done, it's expanded the demographic that come to a Studio Pilates class. We have literally got 17-year-olds to 77-year-olds and beyond. Right. And on all different fitness levels. And Tim, that's an amazing thing. Right. So you're not just from a business owner's perspective, you're not just competing for that, under 30, already fit type of, gym junkie. No. Leave that to everyone else. We're servicing 55-year-olds, 65-year-olds, 75-year-olds, 25-year-olds. We've got them all. We've got them all. And, that's an amazing thing from a business perspective, but it's also super fulfilling, Tim. It's incredibly fulfilling, and that's a really positive thing. And that's why, look, sometimes, we'll see studios saying like 1,000 visits a week, or, it's just crazy numbers because we have got that wide demographic. And the good thing about, people over 35 is they've got the time and the money, and the older you get, more time, and more money, right? So having and that's, from a business perspective, hey man, yes, we service those 25-year-olds and 100% have heaps of them. But man, go where you've got the 55-year-old, the retirees. They come every day. They can come every day.
Yes, so, exactly. No, I love that. So now I want to talk about the owner a little bit. So I think there's the myth every now and then in franchising, like, oh, I have to be experienced at it or I've got to be able to do it. You're not, I'm going to make an assumption here. You're not looking for owners that are also amazing Pilates instructors from that standpoint. What are you looking for in an owner and kind of what do you want them really doing on a daily basis?
Yeah, great question. We do not need people that are already in the fitness industry. We change people's lives, people's careers every day, their profession, because we teach people how to become instructors. That's what we do. We actually have centralized training. So our franchisees don't need to necessarily do the heavy lift on that training piece. Coaching and mentoring, sure. However, we have centralized training, so we'll have training facilities. Each studio becomes a training facility when we open them up. And so from the demographic, yes, definitely don't need to be in the fitness industry. We have franchisees from all walks of life, from corporate refugees, people who have, are looking for something more fulfilling. They want to leave their corporate job. We've got plenty of those. People that were in the restaurant game to, people that were, stay-at-home mums. We've got them all, so it's a really unique thing. Because we've got the infrastructure, we've got the training infrastructure to be able to teach you how to become an instructor and teach you how to operate the business. Now, we do, of course, we need all of our franchisees to be instructors, but we teach you how to do that, right? Just so you can learn the ropes. So it's important to understand the nuances of the business, understand the core product that one's delivering, understand how to run and operate the business, so you can coach and mentor your team members at scale, whether you've got one studio or 50 studios in your portfolio. If you've got that skill set, then you're absolutely, you're ahead of the game. So that's really that's what we focus on.
You want the owners to learn. You want the owners to learn how to do it. They're not in there all day teaching every single. No different than I say McDonald's owners learn how to make French fries. They don't stand back there like making the French fries. Talk a little bit. What might that day in the life be for an owner? I own a Studio Pilates. I'm getting up this morning. What are some things I'm probably doing?
Yep. So it's important to know that the whole business, I streamlined the business to be a 2 to 3 FTE business. So there's only, if you're really busy, you can do it all yourself, if you're really gung-ho, or if you're a couple, husband and wife team, or, bring your sister into it and let's go. Whatever the makeup is, 2 people could be fully hands-on, very, very busy and operate the whole business. But it's usually made up of, half a dozen part-time instructors. And the day in the life normally for an owner, they will arrive at the studio, maybe their morning classes might have been with an instructor within their team. They might come in, when they come in their inbox, in their email inbox, they've got all of the things that they need to do today. It's all automated all across the planet. We've got a to-do list already, a checklist already delivered into your inbox every single day. And if you've forgotten what to do, there's a little link there that takes you directly to a video that shows you exactly what to do. We've systemized everything, Tim. So you might action those items, make some sales calls. You might teach a class or 2 during the middle of the day, do some more sales calls, and, you might rock out. That might be it. Otherwise, you might come in a little bit later. You might come in, teach some lunchtime classes, do some sales calls, and then instruct in those evening classes, maybe from 4:30 p.m. through to 7:30, 8:30 p.m. The great thing is, Tim, you choose your own adventure with this business. It is important to have the skills. It's important that you're in there that first year learning the ropes and learning exactly what to do. But and any contribution that you're making, any of the doing, any of those calls that you're making, any of those classes you're teaching, you're saving money. It's money that you don't have to pay anyone else. And so that's a really positive thing. But that's kind of a little bit of an overview. Choose your own adventure, bit of teaching, maybe going out into the community and promoting the brand. And we teach you how to do that as well. And also just interfacing with the customers. Customers love to see the owner, and also the staff as well. You are the center of the business. You are the, that heart center of the business, and getting to know those customers, getting to know those clients, and creating that community is a really positive thing. And also just, coaching and leading your team.
Yeah, no, and I think one of the things from a little bit as a member, but we owned boutique fitness studios a few years ago, not Pilates, but a different one. And just the stories of the members and how they got to know each other, the instructors, it was I did not fully anticipate how cool that was going to be until that. And so I would think for you guys, having somebody that truly does give a damn about making a difference and building relationships, because you're going to see these people, once a week, 3 times a week, whatever it is, over and over and over, where you kind of get to know you get to know them because they are, I mean, they're literally, there's, blood, sweat, and tears, hopefully not much blood, but sweat and tears, right? Because there's some things in there that aren't easy that they're going to be doing. And so really being that person that's going to enjoy that kind of that human interaction and those relationships, I would guess is going to be super important.
100%. You've got to be a people person. We're in the people business. We're servicing people. We're helping them with their fitness. So if you don't like people, don't buy a Studio Pilates. Don't do it. You've got to be there, and genuinely want to know, people's stories and learn what they do, learn what, about them, their family. And then when you see those bonds, people getting to know each other, people working together. And I think really that's what, really bonds people together, when they have shared experiences, when they have shared sort of trials and tribulations and, those sort of things. And we have all of those things built into the system as well. We have these challenge events. We have these things that they need to complete, and when they do those together, it really forms that friendship and those bonds. And then you see people, after class going out for a cup of coffee, together. And, that's pretty heartwarming, to see that they've discovered a new lifelong friend that they've made within that business. They're getting something that they never signed up for, and it's absolutely positive, so that's really rewarding.
Yeah, no, I love it. What's maybe something that we haven't talked about Studio Pilates that you really like, hey, we got to make sure we talk about this and share that with everybody else? What are we missing for today?
We've covered a lot of ground here, Tim. I think, it would just be enjoy people, enjoy creating those communities, create that, be passionate about helping people with their fitness goals. And also, people leadership as well. That experience and leading people really creates a great successful franchisee for us. I think that's a positive thing as well. But if you're a people person, that's already going to come natural to you. So for us, we're focused on, I guess, our mission for our business is to change the way the world works out. So that's really our big, hairy, audacious goal. And our vision for our business is to empower 1 million people to change their lives through the Studio Pilates workout on a week, over a weekly basis. So in order to do that, we're looking for a lot of franchise partners to be able to be able to fulfill that vision. So we're expanding to about 2,000 locations globally. And that is one of the reasons why we are global as well, because we started in Australia, but the Australian market is only small. So we're in Australia, New Zealand, UK, Canada, America, and coming soon to Europe as well, because we need to fulfill that vision for that business. And it's what we call our 1 million people plan. So again, 1 million people changing their lives through the Studio Pilates product on a weekly basis. So, that's what we're focused on. And if that's something that excites your viewers, Tim, then, give us a call and we'll chat.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I think part of this too, as long as you guys have been around and as many locations as you have, there's still tons of white space in the US for people to like basically kind of wherever you are, more or less, there's going to be operating space for you to come in and have single units, multiple units, whatever as well, right?
Absolutely. We're just getting started in the US, Tim. We have been here for a while. We're ready to really expand now, and we have the infrastructure to do that. And look, because we do things slightly differently, we do things differently to other Pilates brands, there is room for us to coexist in areas where other Pilates studios are, because we do it slightly differently, because we're focused on, we have it so that it's universally accessible for all ages, all fitness levels. So we're attracting different customers, even though there's a different brand in that particular area, doesn't mean there shouldn't be a Studio Pilates as well. We coexist with other Pilates studios, and that's a great thing as well. So, for us and for our franchisees, the US is wide open.
Perfect. Is there the last thing? I heard a rumor that the franchise fee is free if somebody can beat you in a race swimming. Is that true or is that false?
Hey, bring it on! I'm down with that. Let's do it.
Okay, there we go. And if somebody really is dumb enough to challenge you with that, can we get some? I want some video of that. I'll come do the play-by-play announcing, and we'll be doing a little Mike Tirico and Al Michaels at the franchise fee Olympics. So
I love it.
Well, cool. Jade, hey, so nice to meet you. Thanks for hopping up at the butt crack of dawn in Australia to join us today and talk about Studio Pilates.
Yeah, thanks for having us, mate. It was a pleasure.
Hey, thanks again for tuning into the Franchising 101 podcast brought to you by FranCoach. I hope these episodes continue to educate you on the amazing possibilities that can be achieved through franchise ownership. In between podcast episodes, if you still want to learn more about franchising and the ways in which FranCoach can help, there are a few places for you to check out. First, tune in to the Franchising 360 show. It is the only nationally syndicated television show about franchising hosted by me and Danielle Wright. Our TV show airs every Friday, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific on Biz TV. Next, check out the FranCoach YouTube channel, which is FranCoach for You. You can find tons of franchise-specific content there. Plus, you can catch past episodes of the Franchising 360 show. If you like to read, we encourage you to check out our book, Becoming a Franchise Owner. You'll never guess what it's about. And finally, when you're ready to take that first personalized step and explore the franchise industry further, please reach out to our amazing team at FranCoach. You can click the QR code or find us at francoach.net. There is never any fee for our service, so let us help you create your better tomorrow.